Sarah. I'm coming to you from northern Maine, right up on the Canadian border in the North Maine woods. And I would love to be outside, because there are no bugs, yay, with all my co-hosts, but unfortunately the light wasn't going to work for me. It's a rather steamy Friday, so I'm looking forward to jumping in the lake when I'm all done. But before I do that, I think we should go through what this episode has to offer. So I have works in progress. I have a giveaway. I wanted to report on my Shackleton project. I wanted to talk a little bit about sweater construction as far as yarn goes. Yarns for sweaters. And I want to talk a little bit about a sewing venture I have planned. So let's just jump right in, shall we? Well, obviously I am dressed a little differently. I was editing the video and I forgot in my show notes to mention my appearance on the Fruity Knitting podcast. And I wanted to invite you to head over to their most recent episode, I think it's episode 11, and check out my husband and myself on Knitters of the World. We were so thrilled to be invited by Andrea and Andrew to participate in this segment. I had recommended this podcast in my earlier podcast before this one. Very content rich, content driven, lots of good information and interesting knitting and fun chatter between the two of them and the work that they're doing. So I immediately jumped on the opportunity to participate in the Knitters of the World, and you get to meet Rob, my husband, and his knitting. So I hope you go and check out what they have to offer, and thanks again for including us in that great segment. All right, back to the original show. So works in progress. I have in my Matter, my setup is very precarious today. I have in my Matter made bag the Siri sweater by Linnea Ullman, which looks like this. It's a sweater knit from the top down, and it's a yoke construction with a textured yoke. Let's see if I can find another picture which might be helpful. A little bit lighter. This is knit in Gotland wool, and I am knitting it in the Flat Island yarn prepared by Hampton Fiber Mill and gifted to me by Just a Little Gray. I really like the way the textures of evolving in the pattern and the way that the yarn is behaving. I'm knitting it, I think, a little bit denser than perhaps what the yarn might call for. It's a pretty lofty yarn. It's pretty loosely spun. And what I mean by that is the ply going into the two strands is there's quite a bit of space between the twists, so less twists per inch on the ply. But all the same, you can see the texture there and the luster on that. So I just finished one chart, I'm starting another, and in about 30 rows I'll be dividing off for the sleeves. At the end you pick up the button bands and knit all that. So I'm waiting to have this done for Rhinebeck. We shall see. Aside from a little bit of ache in my hands, I'm knitting that on a US 7, and the stitches are twisted, so there's a lot of manipulation of the fabric, and I'm a bit of a tight knitter anyway. I'm a bit slow on that particular project just because of the kind of the movement and the amount of time it takes me to grab different stitches and twist them, etc. So you're kind of creating this like textured lace look. But so far I'm knitting 2 spec in that pattern. And I saw she just published a new one, so we'll take a look at that too. I also have on the needles for Love and Lemons by Melanie Berg. This is a Quince & Company pattern, and I'm knitting it out of Quince & Company yarn in their Piper. Oh, rats. Which is a merino and mohair blend, 50-50. I really wanted to capture the essence of the fabric, so I did go with the mohair merino blend. And this is the outcome. And again, it's not like, I hate to use the word mindless knit, but you know, once you kind of understand where you're going with the pattern, you don't need to bring a lot of accoutrement with you or the pattern with you to complete. So it's a great travel pattern for me, and it's light. I'm looking forward to having this type of fabric in my wardrobe. I have a lot of kind of dense garter stitch type shawls, and this is a little bit lighter and a little bit airier, so looking forward to that. Sarah of Upton Yarns knit this, and I love the way it came out, which was my inspiration. I got to see it in person in a trunk show at Knitwit in Portland, which is the Quince and Company flagship store, and she opted to move forward with the pattern then, and then once I saw what she, you know, how it came out with what she did, I decided I had to have it too. So I'm sorry, I'm just being a little distracted by that, which I don't need to be. But that, I can fix that in a minute. So that's really all that's active on the needles right now. I have my washer going in the background. I'm hoping that I have enough time before it beeps very loudly. So I also have my Shackleton. Now, Shackleton departed in October of 2014 from Buenos Aires, and he rescues his last man in August 30th of 1916. So we're coming up on our year Shackleton anniversary in October. The Endurance sinks in October, so currently right now they're still icebound with the ship, but she will be going down at the end of October. And then we have until the following August when the last man is rescued off Elephant Island to complete our project. So we've got a little bit of time yet, so if you're still thinking of doing a Shackleton, just join in. What is the Shackleton? It's your epic knit. Shackleton was an Antarctic explorer whose exploration went awry, and he was able to return after a year and a half with all of his men. He didn't lose one. And so that's why I kind of picked him as the muse for this make-along, because we all get out alive, success or not. So my Shackleton is Kate Davies' pattern Frost at Midnight, which is a lace-weight yoked cardigan. I designed the yarn for this from Flat Island Fleece, which is gray Flat Island fleeces at Starcroft Mill. So that was part of the Shackleton piece. So in conjunction and with support from Janie Estelle of Starcroft, I was able to construct this yarn to specs. I just couldn't find anything commercially that I wanted to work with. And here it is. So you see I've got the picot edge, and then this much knit. And this is just back and forth stockinette. I like the way it's knitting up. It's kind of capturing what I like to think of as a croft spun. So it's not commercially spun and it's not hand spun, but it's kind of in between. It kind of has a little bit of that hand about it. And so it's not perfection, but it's definitely magic. And yeah, I couldn't be happier. I think it's going to block out really, really well. Have some beautiful drape, have lots of luster. This has a beaded yoke section, which I've obviously not gotten to yet. So lots of firsts for me. First yarn design, lace weight cardigan, and then the beaded yoke. The Shackleton base will be available in the fall sometimes. We're still working on a release date, so stay tuned. I'll have more information about how you can sign up to know when that will be released. It's going to be through a newsletter, and then that's how I'll kind of release it, newsletter and Instagram. Let's see. So that's Shackleton. On the subject of Shackleton, very quickly, we have a really amazing group on the Ravelry boards who've been contributing in conversation, and it kind of comes and goes what people are talking about, but what I've really enjoyed about that particular thread is just a sense of camaraderie and people channeling Shackleton in a lot of different ways, both in their knitting and in their crafting as well as in their lifestyle. And I've definitely been channeling some Shackleton for myself, courage and bravery and his sense of humor. When you read some of his diaries and journals, and perseverance. So go Shackleton. Anyway, I would encourage you to go take a look at some of the projects that have been completed, and there are a few, and also take a look at the thread and just see how people are responding to this type of challenge in their lives. They're this kind of epic knit, and I don't know, I just love playing with the whole metaphor of being on the boat and people talking about being on the ice and below decks and coming back up for air and that type of thing. So it's just been a really fun way to talk about knitting, kind of metaphorically, and I just have really enjoyed that bigger picture. So go take a look. There's just some really gorgeous projects, and congratulations to all of you who have finished. I have some secret squirrel stuff happening for Shackleton, but I can't tell you yet, so stay tuned. All right. I did a drawing. We had a giveaway by Shop Teasel, and she donated $25 in her shop. First, I've got my stuff everywhere. Such a patient audience. Don't mind that. Secret squirrel. There was a drawing announced last episode for Shop Teasel, and a $25 gift certificate to her. Last time on the podcast, I announced a giveaway with Shop Teasel, which was a $25 gift certificate to her shop. And I asked you to describe a wool hero or heroine, or nominate somebody. And I had so many great entries. I don't have time to highlight them all, unfortunately, but it ranged from Kate Davies to people's local, their own local shepherd or shepherdess. Some of you nominated myself. Thank you so much. That was exceptionally flattering to be included in that. I have a winner, but Deb Robeson, Peace Fleece, Peter and Marty of Peace Fleece. Again, more local shepherds. Louise Scully of Knit British. We have lots of very cool people. Nomination of 2, Maggie Casey, a spinner. So I would go ahead and take a look at that thread. There's a lot of amazing people nominated. I did do the drawing. I don't necessarily like doing this because I feel like I don't like not giving something to everybody, but I did the drawing, and the winner was number 19, and that was 2 through 23, and that was S. Moffat, and she nominated Kate Davies. Really dug into her blog, what a thoughtful researcher she is. Then working through the effects of a major stroke, much like my dad about 6 years ago, really drew me in with her perseverance and dedication to give back into her joy and working in the wool community. Now I am knitting her rams and yows for my parents. So that was S. Moffat. So thank you so much for participating, everybody, and giving me lots of great ideas. I think that this is going to be a really nice reference for me to move forward with some wool heroes and heroines. So Kate Davies, S. Moffat, number 19, you've won a $25 gift certificate to Shop Teasel. So get in touch with me, please, and I will put you in touch with Kim. And thank you so much, Kim, for such a generous donation to the podcast. That was a really fun way to encourage people to participate. So I was asked to discuss sweater yarn, the best yarns for sweaters and breeds for sweaters. And this has been a really difficult topic for me to address. I have had a hard time condensing all the information I want to say into something articulate. Plus, it's exceptionally hot and steamy here, and I'm just kind of wilting a little bit. I thought I would talk a little bit about my process, and if that is an application that can be picked up and applied to your process, then great. There's always the alternative, which is knit what you want with what you want. But you can also, you know, if you're looking for different results from your sweater knitting as far as wear goes, then maybe this will be helpful. So I'm just going to start off with two pieces. The first one is what kind of drives the initial garment, and that will always be the yarn. Hi, friend. So I'm more interested in collecting stories and the soulful pieces of yarn than I am about the garment. So I usually start with the yarn and then move towards the garment. Once I kind of have the yarn, I can think a little bit about context. So, you know, I can look at that yarn, I can kind of deconstruct it. And that's kind of where this conversation really needs to go, is looking at yarn construction and what we're willing to put up with, what we're not willing to put up with. So for example, I have a 3-ply Icelandic and I have a singles Icelandic. And what does that mean, right? How is this going to behave over time? What does a 3-ply give you that a singles doesn't? What does a singles give you that a 3-ply doesn't? That piece of construction. Then there's also, how was the fiber prepped before it went into the yarn? How's that going to behave? That's kind of the crux of where we want to go with this particular segment. I've talked about woolen versus worsted before, but I just kind of want to get clear about there's a continuum there of preparation. So we've got woolen, which goes into the twist kind of as a web. And so that yarn is always kind of wanting to push out and return to its original form. So you get a lot of air, very lofty. We also have worsted prepared, where the fibers are all combed into one aligned piece, right? All the fibers are perfectly aligned and they enter the twist aligned. When you're spinning worsted, none of your twist, if this is my yarn here going into the wheel, no twist goes into the web before it's drafted. So all the twist is here, I pinch, I draft, I let go, yarn enters. Woolen, I'm kind of allowing that twist to go into the web. It's going in before it's kind of, as it's kind of drafted, okay? So that's how that fiber can get all jumbled and air can get trapped. All right, so we've got lots of different levels of construction to talk about. So woolen and worsted being the first. Woolen tends to be warmer and it'll have a little bit less tensile strength. Worsted tends to have a little bit more tensile strength, a little bit more durability. Woolen is warmer because there's more air and loft within the fiber, and that allows that insulatory property. And the worsted, you get more drape because there is no air, and it's going to have a little bit more ability to lie flat or to open up because it's not fighting with each other in the twist. So woolen and worsted, and then there's a continuum in between. That's where we're going to start. On the next edition, I will talk a little bit about construction thoughts, right? How are we going to put all those strands of yarn we've just spun together into a yarn? And hopefully this will be helpful, but we'll see. Right. Okay. I think with that, on that note, I'm going to shift gears very quickly and talk about sewing. I am going to start my own sewing vlog, and these will be short segments once a month on what I've been making and any acquisitions I've made. It's going to be called Clementine Made Me Do It. And they may appear in this feed. If I can start another channel, I will, but they'll be titled Clementine Made Me Do It, and you will know that that's sewing related. And you can tune into sewing or not. I know that there's crossover there, but I feel like my sewing has really kind of evolve into its own thing, and to continue to include it in the fiber podcast is going to just extend the amount of time. And so I've noticed that there's a number of sewing blogs out there that are kind of short, like 12 or 15 minutes. And I think that would be a really good platform to talk about my sewing. So look for Clementine Made Me Do It. And you can hear more about my sewing. I think on that note, it's time for some ice cream and to get my dogs out and do the dishes and do some chores around here. Go for a swim. I look forward to seeing you next time, and I really appreciate everybody who's reached out, all the comments. I read everything that comes my way. I may not always respond, but I read everything, and I will see you in the fall. And may all your treks include fiber and bring you back home safely.